Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Aftershocks of After Loss. And I'm Rachel Donnelly with Black Dress Consultants, and we are here with on a special time today because it's my son's birthday today, and I wanted to spend it with him tonight. So I'm get our guest to join us right now. And hello.
Hello. Let me fix my thing. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
I can hear you just
Okay.
perfectly.
All
I
right.
can't see all of your beautiful face though.
All right. That's what I'm trying to fix here. Okay.
I know. Hashtag real world problems, right?
I know, right?
Oh my gosh. Well, while you're getting that set up, welcome everybody to the Aftershocks of After Loss at a special time today. Oh, now you're sideways. Oh, okay, you're good. All
Okay. Good.
right, perfect. And I'm Rachel Donnelly with Black Dress Consultants, and I am just super excited to have Zeena Regis with me today, my sister from another
Mhm.
mister. My fellow Scottie, are you wearing your black ring?
You know what? I always wear it, and I'm not wearing it right now.
I mean, of all days, the black ring mafia to be strong. All right, well, you're wearing it in spirit.
Yes,
So,
always.
um, well, Zeena, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you? I mean, well, obviously, let me tell everybody what the black ring signifies. So, Zeena and I both attended Agnes Scott College, which is here in Decatur, Georgia, and it is a women's college, not a girls' school, right?
Exactly.
I mean, when people say girls' school, like I get a little fiery. I'm like, what was our saying on campus? We are not a girls' school without men. We are a women's college without boys, right? Wasn't that it? Okay.
That was it.
And Zeena and I graduated 1 year apart, both in political science, and somehow ended up in the death care world.
It's so bizarre,
It's
but
so bizarre.
perfect.
Yes. But Zeena, why don't you tell everybody about you?
Sure. So yes, Rachel's already told you the most important things. I went to Agnes Scott. I feel like that's it.
That's it. All right, we
Um,
can move on. Show's over,
yes,
everybody.
we can move on. But I'm originally from Anchorage, Alaska. I grew up there, and then for some reason, my parents were like, "Are you trying to get as far as possible away from LA? I mean, from Alaska?" And I went to Agnes Scott, which was a wonderful, wonderful decision.
Yeah,
And I have and since Agnes Scott, I went to Columbia Seminary, which is also in Decatur. I clearly can't get out of
I
Decatur.
know. We both can't get out, can
I know.
we?
I live in Decatur, but now I live in Decatur with my spouse and my teenager and my two yapping dogs, and I'm hoping that they are going to keep a little quiet.
Yes.
And
I know. I'm
I'm
hoping my kids are going to be quiet, but we'll see.
yes, I'm hoping everything stays quiet. But after I graduated from seminary, I worked as a hospice chaplain for almost a decade. So I've been a hospice chaplain and bereavement coordinator. I'm just shifting in some coaching and consulting work. But so much of my work is centered around grief, loss, resilience, and also anti-racism work. So I'm
Okay.
just really, really, really happy to be
I
here.
mean, I was like, when I was thinking about, all the different things that you and I could talk about, I mean, there's so much. And aside from just our 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, well, it's way less than that. But, just how we sort of ended up and both in death care. And yours was it was not planned, right? I mean, it was, tell us
Yeah,
about that.
it was not at all. So it's so interesting. I went to seminary. I went after Agnes Scott. I was a community organizer, and I
Okay.
loved that work. And my job was organizing faith communities around policies, local governmental policies. And I love that work, but I realized that what I really loved is helping people map their spiritual values with their witness in the world. So like, these are the things that are really important to you faith-wise. How can we make that witness in the world? And so I was like, I don't love a lot of the community organizing part. I love talking to people about this. And so actually one of the pastors I worked with was like, you kind of need to like go to seminary because you're really good at this. And so I had heard that call, even at Agnes Scott. I did a lot of religious studies courses. And so I went to seminary, but I did not want to be a pastor.
Okay.
So I didn't know what that looked like. And so my chaplaincy internship was at a prison. And I loved that work of chaplaincy, meeting people exactly where they are, having completely different values and, religious thoughts, but like really meeting and talking to people there. Anyway.
I mean, well, wait a minute. I just want to press pause for a second. I mean, you've probably gone into like two of the least wanted things in a career. Like, I love working in prisons and death. Like, I mean,
I know.
I love it.
And I did not see the connection at all, but my supervisor was like, you know what? You're so good at this. You'd be good at hospice work. And I was like, ma'am, what? No.
Yeah, you're like, say what?
These are two different things. But I actually applied for a residency as a hospice chaplain and loved it. And it's kind of the rest is history. I loved the relationship building. I loved exactly what I got to do in the prison, like meeting people exactly where they are and helping people make meaning of where they are. So
and I love how you just put that, because I don't put it that eloquently, but I love that because a lot of even though my work is different than yours, it is meeting that person where they are and, helping to guide them or come up with a plan, whatever that looks like, and where they are. And it's, I know it's, super fulfilling for me. And I, can only imagine with your background, just how great that is.
Yeah, it really, really is great.
And so you worked in hospice for 10 years, like or more than 10 years, 12 years was it that you
said? Just like 10 years, almost
10 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. So tell us tell us about that experience. And did it evolve over that 10-year period? Were there things that you saw just over and over again? Like just tell us about that.
Yeah, it did. So like I've been doing some writing, and I've been writing about how much working in hospice has changed me and the way that I look at the world. And so while I don't know if it evolved, I know I definitely evolved in the way that I see the world. And because working in hospice really helped me to see. So people always say, and I'm sure you get this too, Rachel, like, how do you do the work that you do? Like, how do you talk about death? Like, I could not do that. I'm too sensitive. It would, it impact me.
I know people are like, ooh, like they bristle. They're just like, they're so just uncomfortable. And they're like, ooh, you're going to need counseling for doing this. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But
yes, that's the same. And so I actually have started saying, like, it's the quickest way for somebody to me to introduce myself and someone to find a reason to get another drink, or I'm not like, they do not. They're like, hospice. Okay, that's sweet. You must be an angel. I'm out.
Yeah, you're like, I'm gonna go get some Chardonnay. I'm out. Like,
yes. I'm like, what do I have on me? But it's really so much of it is not really about. Well, one, I think we do have to talk about death, and I think so many good things come from being open and talking about death. But I also think we do not. What I saw in hospice is that the death is there, of course, but it's the reasons that death is hard that make the work what it is. Like, there's so much love, there's so much connection, there's so much family, like all of the things that make death hard, like the reasons we want it to be hard are good things. Like we want it to be hard because of the legacy that we leave on earth. We want it to be hard because
Absolutely.
of the connections that we've made. And so I just have, in my hospice career, gotten to see so much love, so much connection, so much. And I also it's helped demystify death a little bit for me, not in the sense that, like, I don't know what happens after death, of course, but like, we are ourselves for the most part up until we die. And so seeing that, like, I always imagined that when I first started in hospice, we'd have these hallmark, like, moments of, like, reconciliation and like these deathbed confessions. But for the most part, people are who they are up until they die. And that shouldn't be reassuring to me, but it is. And so like learning about like who we are and how we make sense of even like unimaginable loss and tragedy. Like I heard a grief educator say we grieve in character, but I also have come to see we die in character in so many ways. Like how we lived is often how we died. And like, and at the same time, there is always room for growth. Like people growing right up until they die. So all of those things make me extremely happy. And in my own life, like working in hospice, like kind of personally and professionally collided. My sister-in-law died unexpectedly, and so I am raising her child, my nephew, and so right at that same time, it was so like how the universe and God works all together. I was working in pediatric and adolescent hospice, and learning how children grieve. And then I have a child who's grieving. And so it just helps me to be very, very attentive to the grief process and how do we support grief in larger institutions in our world.
Right. Oh my gosh, that is so funny how the universe. And that's not even the right word. But it is. It's like life is a riot. You're like, wow, like really, like those two worlds are colliding from two totally different, ways. And it's just, it's so interesting. And, I was talking with, and I think I mentioned this to you, Jennifer O'Brien last week, who's the hospice doctor's widow. And we were talking about, how there's the misconception around hospice and that, people wait till the very last minute. And then I loved what you said about, helping people to make the most of their hospice experience. And to me, like that's groundbreaking to even think that you would be proactive or intentional in seeking out and optimizing that in the best way possible. And so let's talk about that, because to me, like I said, that's not groundbreaking to you, but it was just a very interesting perspective in looking at hospice, because people see it as this like, oh my gosh, they're going into hospice. Okay, they're going to be gone in 5 days or less.
Right. So yes, and that is something that I've come to kind of just by seeing it play out. And so often, and you'll hear hospice people say this all the time, people start hospice way too late. And we get it, but like, because we don't talk about death and we don't talk about the process, and we, hospice seems like admitting defeat. So like, like, so having someone come in for hospice feels like, okay, we've given up, when that is
thrown in the towel. And
it's such,
or they think it's like by calling hospice, then they're dooming their loved one to death. They're like, oh, we might as well just put you out on the ice like the Eskimos because it's over. So
and it's so what I've seen so often is that people, one, like a comment that happens so often, like I can't even count the number of times that people say it, like, my loved one is feeling better, like they don't need hospice anymore, like once hospice comes in. But it's because hospice workers are so skilled at managing symptoms. And so symptoms that have been plaguing people throughout their treatment and throughout their journey with the disease and the disease process, they're able to, like, for the first time, sleep through the night, or not be constipated, or not have all these medications with conflicting side effects. And so all of those very logistical things very physical, very tangible things happen.
Right.
But then also you are given a support network.
Right.
And so like you have a nurse, you have a nursing aide, you have a doctor, you have a social worker, a chaplain, volunteer coordinator if you want one, like volunteers to do things. And so in so many ways, I had this physician told me this, and I think about it all the time. He's like, the medical part of hospice is important, but what we give short shrift to is like the support, the emotional and spiritual support part.
Right.
And so if families, and so often, and what happens all the time, and I want to scream it from the rooftop, and not just because I'm a chaplain and that's what I do, but I often have families who will decline a chaplain, will say, I don't have, I don't have spiritual needs. I have a pastor, or for whatever reason. And it makes so much sense to me, because this is a time where you don't want people in and out of your home. And like, it makes sense. But the benefit you get, not even from a religious or faith perspective, you just get another set of eyes and ears in your home, being an advocate for you. And that's like what I saw my role is as a chaplain more than anything, is being an advocate to say, because there are so many things we can miss medically that another set of trained eyes can see. And so those are some of the really practical things I say about, like, because I think how we die really affects how we grieve. And so, and how we're able to grieve that loved one. And so working in as the chaplain and then working also as the bereavement coordinator, I could kind of see the things that the patterns that people have when they have a really difficult time, like progressing through the grief process. And no judgment at all, but so often we're so focused on the logistics of death that we don't get to really take in the holy time that it is.
Exactly.
So if we get like a moment to like have some support, and I think part of it is just our culture. Like, we don't know how to have help. We don't know how to ask for help. We don't know what we need.
Well, and especially in death and after death. Like, we do not, it's like this very Puritan, I don't know what it is. Like, put your head down. You're going to do this. Don't ask for help. It somehow might diminish the level of love that you have for your, I mean, and I'm like, okay. And I mean, no, I've been there, done that, but it's just such an interesting phenomenon.
It is. And there's also this idea that we don't want to make other people uncomfortable. And what makes people more uncomfortable than talking about death and talking about the logistics of death and all these things, but like being able, because what happens is the primary caregiver often becomes all things to the person who is dying. So
and that's exhausting to them.
So that's exhausting. And so they are not able to, for so many reasons, take in this really holy, monumental time, because we're only focused on the logistics, which is completely understandable. But like getting some help to even help you see, like I can talk, or, we can talk, we can sit at the bedside, thinking about other ways. One of my favorite parts of being a chaplain is helping people think about ways to be present with their loved one, because we think of being present. I do this with my kid. Like, you always gotta be doing something. Like,
I know.
Are you eating? Your face is a little dirty? Did you comb your hair? Like, and so we do that even with people who are dying. Like, we just don't know how to be. And so just encouraging people to just be and really take in this time we'll never get again. And so just thinking about it in those terms, and families that have allowed hospice workers to come in and take away some of those external stressors, always report later, like, I'm so glad you let me be with my loved one and I didn't have to do everything. And I think it makes for a better death and grief experience to just be able to have some of that time. So that's like what I would scream from the rooftop, like, let hospice help. And if you feel uncomfortable with hospice helping, don't automatically think that it's because it's hospice in general. Sometimes, and I say this, and I know hospice workers hate to say this, sometimes nurses aren't a good fit. Sometimes chaplains aren't a good fit. Sometimes social workers aren't a good fit. It's personality. If the personality is not working for you, say that. I've had so many times and this is going to sound like I'm the best chaplain. Not at all. But I've had
well, you
people
are.
Like,
I mean,
no.
let's be honest here. Come on.
But I've had families say, like, we don't want a chaplain. We had a chaplain before, and they were terrible. Right. And then I come in and I say, like, what do you want me to do? And or what will be helpful? And I give them a menu and options, and they're like, oh, you gave me options. Okay, like, I need you to do this, this, and this. And they're like, oh, we're glad we let you in. But it's because, like, one, just even saying, like, I don't come in and dictate what I want, what I'm going to be for your family. You are active in this care plan. So if you want me to just come in, I actually had one patient, I used to watch Wendy Williams with him because that's what he wanted to do. And that's what his family, and I loved it. And I still love Wendy Williams because of that. I will watch it. Religiously.
Who doesn't? I mean,
but like, it's those things, and like allowing people just to help and support. But I realize that takes practice. That takes a whole lot of practice.
Oh, wow. So much to unpack from that. And I do want to take a moment for those of you who have just joined us. This is Zeena Regis. Like I said, my sister from another mister. And I was just thinking earlier, why didn't we come to each other's house and do this together? I mean, I could probably throw a rock to your house.
That's so true.
All right, but we'll do that another time. But
we will.
Zeena Regis, chaplain, hospice, extraordinaire, hospice worker extraordinaire, grief. And we're going to talk about grief coach soon. But and fellow Agnes Scott alumna. We're Scottie sisters. And but I do, one thing you were talking about is how we die is how we grieve. And I think that one of the biggest things after someone passes away is the stuff. And I don't know if you watched, I had Jiffy Page from Pixorium a couple of weeks ago talk. So oh my God, I love her. And we talked about the photos. But then to flip that coin, it's the stuff. I mean, like I've gone through so many houses after, when my parents had both died, and then my uncle, and the stuff that I found that like my mother kept after my dad died, I was like, Mom, what the actual hell is wrong with you? Like, why did you keep this? Like, this is like, we should have probably like admitted you to a psych ward, like that you kept all of this stuff. But there's so much to unpack in unpacking someone's life. And one of the ways that you help people is help coaching them through getting rid of the stuff or parting with the stuff. So talk about that, because I still struggle with that. Like, I got some stuff of my mom's that I'm like, why do I still have it? But it's been like a 12-step process. I'm like in step 7, maybe, I'm getting rid of all my mama's stuff. But let's talk about that.
Yeah, it is so, and it's so funny that I have found myself called to do this work because I am a pack rat. I love to keep things like by nature.
Do as I say, not as I do. Right?
Yes, but through seeing, that's why I always say, I don't know how, like, hospice has changed me so much, because one of the things that I was noticing as working with people after death and their grief is like stuff always came up. And it was interesting to me because I'm like, how we don't talk about this as a culture, but like going through someone's life in things and like their possessions and their belongings. There's this researcher, David Eckert, I believe his name is, but he calls it our material convoy. And I just, that image sticks with me. Oh my God,
I'm going to write that down. Material, I love that.
And so we have material convoys. And then, so we have like just the stuff that is our stuff. And then I look at, so that would always come up. Like, people would always say, and I remember this young woman who just brought it into stark focus for me. Like, she was an extreme case in the fact that her father was a hoarder. But she was like, I'm so pissed at him for leaving me to go through all these things that I can't grieve him. And he was an amazing father.
Oh my God, where is this girl? She and I got to get together because I was so pissed at my mom and my uncle for not getting rid of anything. And like, I mean, I had to clean out 5 houses after my mom died. and I called her a high class hoarder because she had great stuff, but it is a real issue. And it
is.
caused so much strife, to be quite honest, between me and my sister. I was down there every day, all day, for 6 weeks cleaning up my mom's house. And I had a dumpster, I had a roll off, and I was just like, and she was like, you don't even know what you're throwing away. And I was like, I don't care if there was a Van Gogh in there. Like, at some point, you gotta throw it out.
That is what happens. Like the same woman was saying, she was like, he has really wonderful stuff. I won't know because it's all going in a dumpster. And
Yeah.
so we talked about like, how can I support you through this process? And she was like, honestly, I've never thought about someone helping me through.
Yeah.
Like to actually, because she was like, some of these things I do want to tell the story of, or take a picture of, or just share in some way. And so that experience of helping her through that, like really I kind of did a deep dive. Like my whole desk right here now is full of, let me see where, but there's a book about keeping the memories, not the stuff on my desk.
Oh, I have that too. I think I have that book. It's such a good book.
It earlier.
Yes,
it is.
It's such a good book.
Oh,
yes, I
Janine
have
Bryant.
That one. Yep.
So just reading through and thinking about like how we do want to keep the memories, not the stuff. And there's also a generational difference. Like, I'm really blessed because my parents live right around the corner, but like, they have so much stuff. And now we have these talks all the time. I'm like, you have a basement and in a garage full of things that we're just going to throw away. And so now in having these conversations, they're like, okay, my mom's always like, well, let me put together the things that I want you to pass on. And so the question that I've been leading a lot of people with is like, what do you want? Are there any objects or belongings that you want to have a life beyond your own?
Yeah.
And helping people identify them and write them down and like, just think about it has been so helpful because we don't ask those questions. And so like, one of the things, like people are like, my mom has millions of mugs. I'm not going to know if there's one's important to her and or if there's one not important to her. Like, and so just having people start the idea, start downsizing before a crisis.
Yes.
I'm like, we have to start doing some of that work. And then we look at generationally, like this man that I was seeing for grief care, amazing. Like he was an older gentleman, he and his wife had collected this beautiful home of Ethan Allen furniture. He could tell me when each purchase was brought, how they saved for it.
Right.
How, like, you know, and the relationship, his children, and I'm afraid me also, that I have with furniture is not the same. Like, it is IKEA. It is like Target.
Well, that's a new way. Nobody wants the old brown furniture of our grandmothers.
Everybody, and it's almost disposable in our life. So he was really lamenting that his kids are like, dude, I live in a 600 square foot house. Like, I do not want an Ethan Allen armoire like in my home. And so, but having those conversations before death and grief and crisis is such a helpful thing. Or bringing someone in to help facilitate that. There's this great program called my grandmother's yellow pie plate, and it helps people. Yes, I love that.
Yes,
and it helps people have these conversations before death. And I'm looking at all the comments. Yes.
Oh well, and so my friend Beth just called me out, and I'm gonna kill her for this because there is a baby carriage that was my grandmother's that's in my dining room right now, and my husband absolutely hates it. He says it's creepy AF, and he hates it, and I love it. And it's like my grandmother's born in 1911, so it was her baby carriage. It was like 110 years old at least, and I love it. And I think my husband would, like, if I left for too long on long vacation, he would probably throw it out in the street and be like, somehow it got outside. But it's like, it pains me to even think about getting rid of it. I'm like, what would I do with it? But it's just stuff. But the struggle is real.
But it's also more than stuff. And that's the thing is, it's stories, it's memories, in some ways it's legacy. And so kind of unpacking like, one, because I am not a Marie Kondo. So I am like, it does not have to spark joy. It doesn't have to, but there is, even in having people, like in some of my clients, I just have them tell the story of why it's important. And sometimes once it's been released and they've told the story and written it down or whatever, and we've taken some pictures, they're like, okay,
all right,
I can let it go.
good. That was all I needed.
I'm good. Or even, I think we also underestimate just the power of it having another story. And so I was talking with this woman about like this piano that she was a single mother. She had saved. She wanted her daughter to have piano lessons. So she's like, her daughter is now grown. She's like a yoga instructor in Costa Rica. She is not going to have this piano. So she's
piano
like,
is not going to Costa Rica.
Like, I think she lives in a yurt. She is not about to have this piano. And so the woman who she lives not far from is a neighbor. She was saying like, I don't know what to do. Like this piano represents so much, like giving my daughter so many possibilities, like having it in our house, having regular piano lessons. But she started thinking about like, I don't play the piano. Like there's no reason for me to have this here. I need to start thinking about like what's going to happen after I die. So she found a woman through her church whose granddaughter was taking piano lessons and was able to gift them the piano. So that made it come. She was like, oh, like it has another life. It'll have another story.
Yes. And it's not just sitting there.
Yeah. So it's not just sitting there. So I think there's a difference between like goodwill. One woman we helped, her husband had overcome like a long drug addiction, and so NA and just Narcotics Anonymous and things like that were so important to him. So when we talked it through, we were able to gift her things to nonprofits that helped people who were struggling with addiction.
See, that is so powerful, and I love that. And I just saw someone put a comment about her husband's wardrobe and the clothes. That's hard, especially when they smell like them, or they you just remember these times when you saw them wearing, and clothes is hard. I'm not gonna lie, like it's so hard. So what are some of your tips? Well, number one, I always say don't do anything in the first year. Just like, if you don't have to, don't do anything,
So that is my big advice. If you don't have to, if it's not an immediate thing, like take your time and think it through and get help. I mean, it really doesn't have to be paid help. Get a friend. Like I always say that like people's gifts are different. And so there are some friends I know I'm not going to call just to talk through my feelings. Like, some friends who are like, give me a mission and let me accomplish it. So sometimes that is where we can let those friends in to be like, I want to clean out this closet and I want a little assistance to do that. So get help if it's possible, but also like take time. I love, and this is becoming a book like show and tell, but the past and present. Is it Allison Gilbert?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll have it's called Past But Present.
Past but Present. Okay. I love that.
And it's all about all these neat things that she did for her parents, like making a teddy bear out of a tie. One of my favorite things is like her mother was a big costume jewelry person. And so what she did was made little globes, from Michael's, filled with like pieces of her costume jewelry, and gave them to like the kids and the grandkids, and people loved it because they had one little piece of like Nana's jewelry. That would be forever like on display. So one, thinking through those things, like is there a quilt I want to have made? Is there are there ways I can display it? Another idea that she had that I thought was brilliant, like her mother collected vases, like so many of us. Every time we get flowers, we keep the vase.
Yes.
So all of the hospice workers, she gave them flowers in those vases and said, this was from, a patient that loved you. And would you keep this vase? And know that this was important to her. Like those kinds of things, I think, can help us think through, because it has a story beyond that story. So thinking like how we can keep them and make them of use and keep them of use. And so I think those are ways that we can do it. And know that we don't have to give everything away. I think we have this idea that everything has to go.
Yeah.
And everything has to have like a meaning for why we keep it. We can just keep things because we like them or
Exactly.
they remind us. And so those kinds of things. And also thinking who might want these in our circle. You know, like one of the things, this is so silly, and I can't even believe I'm saying this out loud, but one, I have a TikTok addiction. But there are now accounts where it's just like Gen Z, like these kids, teenagers, trying on their mothers and grandmothers' clothes and like laughing about them. And it's like so funny because they're just so into like, this is my grandma's blazer or whatever. And so even some of that, like what like silly things can you do with these clothes to like memorialize
Oh,
them?
I love that. All right. All right. You and I are going to have to start doing that on TikTok. I mean,
it's adorable. Like,
well, I see that Max from Oak Tree Memorials is on here, and he's like, all right, we got to get you on TikTok next. So maybe that'll be our thing. Trying on all of, like, I got all my grandmother's mink coats, and I don't know what to do because nobody wears them anymore. Number one, I'm afraid that like someone's going to throw like a flame on me for wearing an animal, so I'm terrified to wear it outside. But those are the things that like you're like, what do I do with all this stuff?
Yes,
Yeah.
those are such good memories. I also a friend, she told me this, and she actually sent me the name of the estate salesperson. But she said she went to an estate sale, and she was like, it was like nothing she'd ever been to before because she was like, it was almost set up like a museum.
Yes.
And it had like the story. And she said this was this fabulous woman who had all these fabulous travels in Europe and knew all these people. But she was like, just knowing the story behind the item made her want to like buy things.
Yes, I love
so I thought
that.
about how wonderful too, like even if we're not doing an estate sale, but like I have this article I saved about this couple who like before they were an older couple, but before they had any health crisis or anything, they had people come through and decide, start taking things of theirs that they wanted.
Yeah.
I
love that. And then to like be able to enjoy seeing that joy on their face when your loved one is taking the china or the silver or the mink coats or whatever, I think would be so special.
And this one, I don't even know where I got it, but I'm like, whoever this woman is, I want to be her. I love her. But she had books, like books galore. So before she died, after she was diagnosed, she made little notes in all of her books that she wanted to keep and that she wanted to give away.
Yeah.
And her family had them on display at her memorial service. And so everyone could take them because it had her name in there, like she had signed a little message. And so
so sweet.
it was her family people were able to get these books that meant something to her at the service and take one. And I just thought that was such a beautiful forward thinking, because I know that's one thing in my life that people in my family are going to be like, what the hell do I do with these books?
Exactly. All right, we'll start writing your notes now.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Those are such great ideas. I'm gonna have to start using some of those with clients. Like that is so great. And you and I are gonna have to we're gonna have to join forces. I don't know how you and I become a we, but we're gonna have to like join forces somehow. But I do want to talk about Grief Coach because I think it's so exciting. I love Emma Payne. Like I just love this company and this platform that she's built. So let's talk about that. So you are now working for Grief Coach.
I am.
As a client care manager.
Yes.
And tell us about it.
Yeah, so I am the biggest fan of Grief Coach. So it's wild that I'm working with them now. So Grief Coach is a personalized text-based grief resource service. And it's just really amazing. Kind of my favorite part of Grief Coach is that not only is the identified griever receiving text messages about the circle of support And
Right.
so that is such a powerful part of Grief Coach to me. So if you experience a loss, you can give it as, I mean, if someone in your life experiences a loss, you can
Right.
give it as a gift, or you
Yeah.
can purchase it yourself, but you also identify a circle of grievers who will then get text messages at different points in your loss with ways that they can support you. While you're also getting text messages about the grief process and resources that are helpful. So it's just a beautiful, beautiful service. And so,
and it's so affordable.
it's very, very affordable.
It's $99 a year, and you can get $10 off Grief Coach if you use my code Black Dress. Just FYI, just throwing that out there.
Yes, please. And it's such a, I mean, it's like for the cost of flowers or something. You know, you can give this to someone as a gift. And I've always thought, like how Emma is the founder, president, how we connected, like she messaged on LinkedIn, and I had already seen it because I had for a long time thought that one of the things that we have in hospice care is software that reminds us when it's the anniversary of a death, when it's the 6-month anniversary. So I would always call my clients and be like, I know we hit the month anniversary of your loved one's death. And they'd be like, oh my goodness, you remembered. And they'd be so happy, or they'd be like, just like, thank you for thinking of me. And I'm like, really, it's software? I mean, I never said that, but like, I was like,
you're
people
like,
in our lives.
It's all up here.
Like, yes, I know. Like, I just remembered, girl. But I'm like, people in our lives need these, because it's not, I don't think that people just don't know how to help when people are grieving. They don't know what to say. So having a service to say, this is what we can say. This is, yes, it is the anniversary. How can I support them, and having them reach out? Like, because what I learned as a bereavement coordinator is people were happy that I was calling and reaching out, but they really want their own circle calling and reaching out, because those are the people we love. Like, those are the people who are closest to us. And so having that, so when I found out that there was a service like that, I'm like, oh, I love it. And so Emma has started marketing it to hospices and hospitals and other bereavement support organizations that can give it as a gift to people in their organization, which I just love. And so my role now is supporting hospices that have it, so supporting them in the implementation of giving it so that they can give it as a gift to their clients and their bereaved. But often this is new technology for hospice folks, and hospice kind of moves at a snail's pace when it comes to technology. And so largely my role is just supporting them and helping them communicate to their clients that it's a resource. It's not taking the place of anything. It's an additional thing. And text messages are they're not going to be scary text messages or anything.
No.
So that I'm so happy to be working to give more people access to this wonderful
Absolutely.
service.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the first thing that I do when I take on a new client is I say, are you getting any grief support? And if not, I created a whole after loss guide, and Grief Coach is on there. And it's like, here's a great resource, a tool. It's easy. It fits your fast lifestyle or just where you may be right now, going through grandma's pie plates and all the things, and you may not have time. So it might be a great just tool in your toolbox to have now to get you through some tough times.
And it's just, the messages are really, really wonderful, thoughtful. And the feedback we get is just that, like, oh my goodness, thank you for this. And so I'm so happy that Emma had this vision, and I'm glad that, because hospices, I don't know if everyone knows this, but hospices are required to give up to 13 months of bereavement support.
Okay.
And that always looks different depending on the hospice. It looks, it can look different. And so I really think this is a great tool for hospices, hospitals. I think, and then grief is a thing that as a society, I think we're finally having a bigger conversation and grappling with. Yeah. And so I would love to see Grief Coach offered in schools and
oh my God, no,
all those
I know.
Of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
workplaces,
workplaces, yeah, but definitely for adolescents, for like you said, for schools, for those who don't have access, don't have the resources to get that support if they've lost their parents at a young age. I mean, your nephew who's, now your child is, I mean, thank God you were there, but not everybody has that.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it will combat a lot of the inequities that are out there. And that's one of the last things I'd love to talk about is your mission or your goals working in anti-racism and grief and end of life. And so I'd love to hear more about that and what you're doing in that space.
Yeah. So it's something that I am finally, I think, seeing and really trying to start a conversation about is how it's so interesting. When after George Floyd's murder, I saw my spouse's work. He works for like a cybersecurity company, and
Right.
they are having book studies around, all the like anti-racism books and white fragility. They're having all these conversations, and like that was happening everywhere. Like Black Lives Matter signs are in my neighborhood.
Right.
Even my retailers, like my deodorant is sending me a email saying like, we're committed to diversity and inclusion.
Right, right.
But I wasn't seeing that in the hospice industry. And I think for so many reasons, and not that people in hospice are bad people in any way.
Right,
I think
right.
there was really just the idea like that this is a part of life like people are dying. We're not worried
Right.
about these. This is not of top of mind. But it's been interesting that the things that we say we talk about at death, like of course family and love and trust, but race comes up a lot.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed. I always say I want to sit down and write down these conversations that I've had with people, white, Black, whatever, about
Right.
race at the end of life. Because people are still grabbing. It's such an organizing force in our life.
Yeah.
That people are still trying to make sense of it, even at the end of life. And so I've really been thinking about how can we do better of supporting people's whole lives. Like Black Lives Matter, Black deaths matter, all of these things.
Yeah.
Like how do we support people in dying in a way with equity and just taking cultural differences seriously? Like it's so interesting, like in hospice, kind of systemic racism sneaks in insidious ways, like
Right.
the ways in which we pathologize like just difference. The ways in which I had never thought about this before, but I had this patient who I'm so glad called me on it. But hospice is very, very normal to have a harpist like come in and like play the harp. And I had this patient once who was like, please don't ever bring this harpist in here. Like, one, it just really does sound like death.
Yes.
And two, like, bring something that means something to me. Like, bring in some gospel music, bring in some jazz.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Please don't bring this white lady harpist in here for me. And it was so like, it had become such the standard that like, when he said that, I was like, that's absolutely true. Like, why is this what we offer? And so after that, we were able to offer like, bedside choirs and things that like made a difference for people, that they were like, don't just err to this default of like,
don't do this one size fits all death playlist or whatever. I mean, because it may be it's totally different for everybody. Somebody may want gin and juice at their bedside, or I mean, my mom wanted Tchaikovsky, but that not everybody's jam.
So just asking the question. And so what would happen is, I worked in an inpatient unit at one part of my career, and so we would have like the sweet, she was the sweetest harpist ever, but she would come, and there were times when we would have mostly Black patients, and every patient would be like, don't come in here, and the poor lady would be with her harp, like, people would be like, why don't people want us to do nice things for them? And I'm like, how are you going to give a gift that you've
Yeah,
never asked if they wanted, or
exactly. Yeah, that's
or
so
having little
true.
conversations about it.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that they were able to vocalize that.
Yeah,
That they're like, you know what, this is not my jam. Like, let's thanks for coming, but no thanks. But I
yes,
love that,
yeah,
and
and so
just
just yeah, it was really those kinds of things, and it shows up in ways too that I think that are a lot more insidious. Like, I would always have calls from nurses who would be like, this patient is difficult, or they are aggressive, or they're non-compliant. But it would just be they were asking questions about their care. And
yeah,
because of like all of these cultural imprints we have about angry Black people or whatever, it would come, I would get these, like, you need to go diffuse the situation. And there would absolutely be nothing to diffuse other
yeah.
than this family is asking for information. This family is
Hmm.
passionate about the care that their family is receiving. And that is not a bad thing. And
Yeah,
so having opening up these conversations to say that you are not a bad person. And I think, I will
yeah,
say, I say this all the time, I think hospice workers believe our own hype when it comes to like being angels or wonderful people. And so like the thought of being called on racism can be really hard because
yeah,
I
yeah.
do
I
this
can
hard work.
imagine. Yeah,
I do this work. I support dying people. But it's like the first is that is people. And how do we
hmm,
support people?
yes, yes.
Regardless of where they come from. And it's never going to be a one size fit all. And always
Oh,
knowing that we need new tools and new ways
right.
of talking about people. I know a big thing in our hospice unit has been educating people about LGBTQIA
Hmm.
plus issues, and like realizing that there are so many dynamics that like go into supporting our
Yes,
LGBTQIA elders, and
absolutely.
and like what does it mean? And so even the ways we talk about family can be a really dismissive and really
Hmm.
yeah, and just really prejudicial. Like really, I've had people, nurses say like, and social workers and chaplains, but talk about like they don't have any family when there is such a big chosen family that's there. And so just the
Yeah,
ways in which we talk about family and really
absolutely.
interrogating our language in a way that it's just really important to do and to continue doing. So
I know. I know.
yeah,
That was that my uncle was a gay man, and trying to move him into a a senior living community that was, I mean, you've been into some aging life communities where you walk in and there are 9 women to every one man, and they're like, oh, fresh meat. And I swear I walked through there with my uncle and they were like, oh, and I was like, no, ladies, like keep on trucking. And I remember doing these interviews. We went to several, and they were like, "Well, was he ever married? Does he have any kids?" And just the questions, like it was just so. And I was like, "He was in the Navy, and he was never married." And I was trying to be like, and he had a partner, and I was just trying, but it was just such a different situation because he came from that time where you didn't really talk about it. It wasn't all out, but then it was just uncomfortable for him sitting there and me trying to say
yes,
like, you need, like, think about this for just a second and don't try to put him into this little box that's like everybody else, and tell Betty out there that he's not going to be her companion. Like, tell her to move on. So,
yeah,
but yeah,
yeah, exactly. I
but
think that's
as
so helpful.
I saw all of those issues guiding through him through his end of life journey and just how different it was. And so I love that you are not only tackling just these big broad brush conversations of what people want, but really diving into the hard
Yeah,
conversations.
and I think it's really time for hospice to evolve. Even when like I've even shifted my language from saying who's your family or to like who's your circle of support, because people
Yeah.
will tell you who they need to tell you about. And
Right.
there are just so many, like, family looks so different for each and every person. So I'm always like, let people, because it's just, that's what we do. How long were you married? Or tell
Yes.
me, how many
Yeah.
children do you have? And for a variety of reasons, that's not everyone's experience. And I think
Exactly. Yeah.
generationally, there are going to be even more people who are not partnered in the way that we think they should be partnered, or who don't have
Right.
children in the way that we think we should have children. So I think just even being sensitive with our language and thinking about, like, what do I really need to know in this conversation?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah.
And what is just nosiness? Like, what does
Exactly.
it just mean to
Yeah.
put this person in
And
a
what
box?
and how are you just trying to fill space with
Yeah,
words and
exactly.
ask the, I don't know, required questions or whatever that aren't even
Yes.
required. So I cannot believe that we've been talking for
I
for
know.
56 minutes, and like I just think that we could just keep talking forever. But I want to be cognizant of your time and am just so grateful to have had you on here.
Aw,
And I'm just so glad that you and I have like come
me
around. I know we're
too.
just, we've come around to being in the same space, with a lot of the same goals and missions. We're in the same neighborhood. We just have, like I said, so many great
We
things that are aligning
too.
us. And I'm just looking forward to us, like I said, becoming a we and us taking on this world. But I'm just
Same.
so glad to know you. And if everybody, you're joining us at the last few minutes, this is Zeena Regis. And how can they find you, Zeena?
Yes. So I am Zeena Jane on Instagram.
Okay.
So follow me there. And also at
Hmm.
zeenaregis.com
Okay.
is where you can find me and what's going on with me. And I'm just really grateful, honored that you let me on your platform, because I
Oh my
love the
gosh.
work that you're doing. And
Well,
I'm just grateful that I've always said, like, we need after loss project managers. And then there you are, doing the work that
yes.
people need to know that they're not alone in
Yes.
dealing with all of the many logistics that come with death. And so I'm just so
Well,
grateful of all the
I'm
work that you're
grateful.
doing.
Well, you as well. Right back at you, sister. We're just having a little love fest here at the
Yes.
end. So I love it. Thank you so much,
Thank
Zeena. Thank you for
you.
everybody for joining us.
Yes.
Thank you for joining me
I
this
know. Did I
morning.
see someone was from South Africa?
Yes, there was somebody from South
Yes.
Africa. I love that.
That's incredible.
I don't even know what time it is in South Africa, but thank you for joining us. Thank you,
Yes.
everybody, for joining
Yes.
us.
Thank
And all
you.
right, I'll see you soon, Zeena.
Bye.
All right,
Thank
bye bye.
you.